Hello there! It's Friday, which means it's time once again for the best movie podcast ever, the only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, Konrad, and with me as always, he is the knight. It's Anthony James.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Hello, Konrad. How are you today?
I'm very well. I am proud of managing to figure out a pun for the little introduction there, because how was night spelled there? I'm not saying, but it could be a KN, it could just be a single N.
Yeah, it could be an NITE, like a American nightclub.
Is that how they spell that?
Oh, yeah.
That's not how they spell that.
Oh, it is. Oh, it is.
A nightclub in America is spelled NITE.
Well, American listeners could correct me potentially, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Who allowed that to happen? That's outrageous. Get in touch
I just go with the old-fashioned discotheque. Yeah. Well, you could have, Konrad. You could have went with he is Vengeance, Anthony James. That would have been good.
Yes. Yeah. So we're here. I'm just going to get right into it. We're here to talk about the Batman.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a bit
less
of that.
gruff, a little less gruff, which I appreciate.
So I'm gonna put an amnesty on talking in gruff voices for the first 10 minutes of this podcast. Okay. We're allowed to do it for that. After that, we have to stop because as history has shown us, if you allow people to do shitty Batman voices. We, in fact, know people who did this. I'm not going to name names, but we knew people who did this. If you indulge people's shitty Batman voices, they will never stop doing it. They will never, ever stop doing it. We had a friend who... I say friend. We knew someone who would do an impression of a character from Batman. And fuck me, was it hard work to get through. And, you know, there's enough jokers in the world.
Conrad's the one who first asked. So no, you didn't ask. You were offered and you accepted the offer to hear the rendition.
Yeah. I made the mistake. I opened Pandora's box and I've been regretting it for the last 20 years. Anthony, how are you? I haven't actually asked that yet. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, I think I put my cards right on the table, my Joker cards right on the table for this one from the start. This was a bloody brilliant film, I think Konrad maybe agrees with me. You know, we'll get into the details, but I absolutely love this film. And you know what? Isn't it a real sad thing to say that this is the first time I feel like I've seen a Batman film since The Dark Knight Rises? I know what you mean. You know, I mean, even though Batman's been around, this is the first time I feel like I've seen a Batman film.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and it's also. We won't get fully into it just yet because obviously we need to do our little preamble. We've got to stick to the formula, otherwise, what are we even doing? But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and this was like a breath of fresh air for superhero movies, which I appreciate. Maybe sounds a little bit kind of churlish to be like, oh, finally superhero movies are good again, because they've been good for a while. But this feels like a different kind of movie to a lot of superhero movies in a way that's really refreshing. Yeah. But yes, so. Let's not beat around the bat bush, in fact, any further. Not entirely sure what I mean by that, but we'll swiftly move on. And let's talk about some gosh darn movies.
Let's do it.
Movies. So we've just been talking about the Batman. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna keep calling it Batman. Matt Reeves, you've made a rod for your own back by calling this the Batman because it just makes it harder to say.
What was the first ever Batman? Tim Burton Batman, was that just called Batman?
That was just Batman.
Okay. That's why this is the Batman. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
they wanted to distinguish it. But yeah, so we are going to talk about the Batman momentarily. I just wanted to mention one thing very quickly because what did you say? No problem.
No problem.
Okay, you said that so quickly that I had no idea what words came out of your mouth there. It just kind of sounded like a.
You were like a first year in my class. The first time they ever have me as a teacher, because I've got an Australian accent and they're not expecting it, and I say like a whole 5 minutes of stuff, and they're just looking at me like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. It's just trying to digest that accent for the first time. But I wanted to talk about the BAFTAs very quickly because they happened.
Oh yeah.
2 days ago? No, wait, it'll be Friday when we release this. So when did I watch it? I think I watched it on Monday.
I'd make it 4 days ago.
So Yeah, 4 days ago. Did you? I assume you didn't watch them, but
To be honest with you, no. And I've only actually heard the Power of the Dog won something. I haven't.
Yeah,
I haven't actually heard. I don't know why I didn't even look into it.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you and I'm going to say about 70% of the actual winners, because unfortunately, the BAFTAs continue to. I like the BAFTAs. They're fun. They're like they're an interesting kind of like preamble to the Oscars, and they give a good indication of who's going to win. But unfortunately, a bunch of people who won just weren't at the show, and it became very awkward watching like Benedict Cumberbatch sitting there hoping he was going to win the best actor, and then it going to Will Smith, who was like the latest in a long line of people who are just like, yeah, he's not here. So
it went to Will Smith. Interesting.
It did, yeah, for King Richard, who apparently is the front runner for the Oscar. But
seriously, this is a Leonardo DiCaprio all over again.
Has
Will Smith ever won? Obviously, Leo's better than Will Smith, but has Will Smith ever won an Oscar?
No,
this really feels like it could be the last chance to give him one. That's what it kind of feels like. Or it also feels like it also feels like maybe they're like criticized for not having more representation, and they're like, who should we give it to? We'll give it to Will Smith. Potentially, I've
not seen King Richard, to be honest, so I don't know what his performance is like. I know what Will Smith is like as an actor, and I know that I don't really like.
He was very good in Pursuit of Happiness. I thought that was a really good film, and
yeah, okay.
I don't know who he was up against that year, but I think that would have been the year that he should have got it. Like Leo should have got it a few years, and then they didn't give it to him. That's what it kind of feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. But yeah, so just to go through the winners then. So yeah, Power of the Dog won Best Picture. Jane Campion, director of Power of the Dog, won Best Director. Will Smith won Best Actor. I've already forgotten her name, and I feel awful about it. After the lead from After Love, I'm going to look it up now because I've heard this.
I haven't seen
really
After
good.
Love.
Hold on, After Love. I'm typing it in as we speak. Just bear with me, listeners. I can hear you complaining. Joanna Scanlon, that's her name. So she won the best actress, which is apparently well deserved. I need to see that movie, but she's not nominated for an Oscar, so that's not going to happen. But,
really? That's interesting. Is she British?
For the Oscar. She's Welsh, yeah. So,
okay, well there you go. This is the thing. So, the Power of the Dog has some sort of, tangential relationship to Britain because Benedict Cumberbatch is a star. And I'm just interested to see whether that carries forward to the Oscars, because there always is a little bit more of a favoritism towards British stars in the BAFTAs, and maybe you'd say rightly so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There should have been more. There really should have been more, because when Benedict Cumberbatch he didn't get it, and then he went up for Jane Campion to get I think it was Best Picture. He went up, or it might have been Best Director afterwards. He went up to collect it for her because Jane Campion wasn't there either, and he started reading his acceptance speech for the Best Actor Oscar of BAFTA, which I thought was very funny. And I was like, you should have given it to him. Like, come on, he's in the room. That should be. Like in acceptance criteria number 1 or awarding criteria number 1, are they here? And if not, next one on the list.
Yeah,
give it to them.
That's fantastic.
But so the BAFTAs happened anyway. I didn't want to say too much more than that. But if you're interested in award ceremonies, they were good fun. Rebel Wilson was kind of funny as the host, which is not something.
That's the first time in a while.
Yeah, not something I often say about Rebel Wilson, to be honest. She tends to rub me the wrong way more often than not, But
speaking what we were saying last week, at least they trusted her to do the job by herself.
Yes, exactly. They didn't need 85 hosts because they were worried no single person had the star power for it.
Yeah.
I will tell you what does have star power, and actually, in retrospect, is its star is growing, because I love the sort of retrospective that has been done on Robert Pattinson's career after this, and that is obviously 2022's The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, who most people, I think quite a lot of people, have seen some of his movies before, one of either Cloverfield or the American adaptation of Let Me In, or one of the Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes definitely, like the 3 Planet of the Apes trilogy, the new ones, yeah.
I to be honest, I didn't really like any of his movies prior to this. I mean, Cloverfield's okay. I'd never saw Let Me In. I love Let the Right One In, but I never saw the remake. And the Planet of the Apes movies, they're okay as well. I didn't really have any great affection for them.
It's very interesting, about that, the Planet of the Apes films. Obviously, there's the Batman, but we'll say this very quickly. I started then thinking about watching those films again, and I realized that I for some reason missed the middle one. I don't know. I watched the first one with James Franco, and then I went to the cinema to see the last one.
Is that the one with Andy Serkis? Wait, hold on.
Andy Serkis is in the mall. He's the ape.
He's Caesar or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
he's in the mall. You can tell by the Cockney accent, but he's basically
no.
Yeah,
that's the only bit I remember from that first one.
But basically, I didn't see the middle one, and I didn't.
Is that the one, The Woods? The one where they're like living out in the woods?
Haven't seen it.
Oh, you still haven't seen it, right? Okay, I thought this was going to end with you having watched it.
No. It ended with me watching the Tim Burton one from the 90s, which I'd never seen, or the 2001, which for the first 20 minutes...
Barry Pepper's in that one.
I will say the first 20 minutes, I regret to admit this, the first 20 minutes I said, this actually isn't as bad as people make out. And then very quickly, I realized that
there's a turn.
Maybe the issue isn't with the prosthetics. The issue is actually with the story and the characters themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, so that wasn't a good film. Also, the same night, I don't know why, I stayed up like 1 a.m. watching Planet of the Apes films that night. The same night, I then went and watched the original from 1968 again. And let me tell you, that is a quality film. That is a quality film.
Yeah, that's a cracker. I love like the original. I love that it just ends. Yeah. It's like there's no like big fight to win back Earth from the apes.
It's a conversation in a cave, and then it's like, all right, let him go.
Off we go. Yeah, and it's just like Charlton Heston goes off into the wilderness to try and make something of his life
with his lady bride. Like what is
with his lady?
that was uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was made in the 60s. Yeah. Like they had different views about how women should be depicted then, I think.
But anyway, Matt Reeves. That's where I got with my Matt Reeves tunnel. I never actually watched any of his Planet of the Apes films, but I went back and watched them.
No. I mean, they're popular. My partner really likes them. I think it was the James Franco connection in the first one. I know he's not in the others, but he's enough to put me off of a movie series for good.
Oh, yes.
I think.
But I was going to say, Konrad, actually, people on Reddit are usually very, I don't know what you would say, the Reddit community can sometimes be a bit, I don't know what you would say, pompous. Terrible. Like they think they know better. Hipster, maybe.
Sure.
But they're all hipsters, so they're not really hipster. But, so anyway, what I was interested was, I was sparked actually to watch it by Matt Reeves, as well as someone made a comment on like the Reddit movies about one of the Planet of the Apes films, Matt Reeves. And then like load of the comments, like literally all the top comments were saying stuff like, I think this might go down as one of the best trilogies of all time. I'm not joking you.
The Planet of the Apes ones, or the Batman?
No, the Planet of the Apes ones.
Okay.
About the Planet of the Apes ones.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, very interesting. That's very interesting for Reddit, because usually Reddit people are very like sort of, everything's very highbrow and very hipster about it. But no, there was people saying that they thought Planet of the Apes, and these are the top rated comments, might go down as the best trilogy of all time. Matt Reeves' Planet of the Apes. Interesting.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, good for them if they enjoy it. Like, they're popular movies, and the only reason I mention it is just because I was coming into this movie being like, okay, I know I like the score, which Michael Giacchino. I'm sorry,
he did the score for Lost.
That. Oh, did he? I didn't know that. That's interesting, because there's some similarities in like the very sort of bassy string sections that they use. But I love his. I heard his score before this, and it's just this wonderfully like atmospheric kind of. It makes everything feel very grim but it's still kind of tuneful. I love the use of, I'm not sure what kind of bell it is, but just like this kind of, it's like a funeral or something. It's great. So I knew like I liked his score. I knew Greg Fraser makes very nice looking movies. So he was the cinematographer. He also shot Dune last year, and Rogue One, and a couple of others. So he's a really good cinematographer. So I was like, it's gonna look nice at the very least.
It did look nice, lovely.
It did, yeah. And Robert Pattinson, as I've hinted at before, he in the last sort of, what would you say, 5 years, he's kind of undergone, as has Kirsten Stewart actually, undergone a kind of career I don't want to say revitalization because it implies their career was on a downward
he was
slope, which
a
it
massive
wasn't.
star, but
He was kind of. I think he's kind of been reanalyzed by a lot of like kind of mainstream moviegoers who saw him as Cedric Diggory / the Twilight guy,
Edward,
he's kind of just quietly been getting on with a very, very impressive career. And in the last 5 years, people have been like, "Oh, he's actually making really, really good movies, and has been for some time now."
Yeah, it's like the Harry Potter people, maybe Daniel Radcliffe potentially as well. Even though Harry Potter, he wasn't seen as sort of negatively potentially as Robert Pattinson was. He still went from that massive series and then went into sort of more niche films and chooses what he wants to choose. The interesting thing is though. Robert Pattinson did the same, and he started choosing particular films and like very arty films and niche films in a similar way to Leonardo DiCaprio has always. Now, obviously, the big blockbusters in the last 15 years of his career, but he was very much as well sort of only did projects that he wanted to do and was turned down a lot of projects. Robert Pattinson seems to be going in that sort of mold of like what Daniel Radcliffe's doing now. The interesting thing is though, he then used that to get himself into another massive franchise, which is interesting to me because it was like he wasn't like he didn't go completely against big corporation, big franchise films. He just went sort of I don't know, washed his reputation a bit, and then came back out. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and what better way to do it than making the Lighthouse and Good Times and I'm forgetting one, but he's made like a series of very, very good movies that are like kind of critically acclaimed, and I think the difference. I don't want to
Tenet. Come on,
Tenet. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a big it's Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
But I think the big difference between him and Daniel Radcliffe, and I don't want to talk down to Daniel Radcliffe, is that like Robert Pattinson is just so fucking charismatic.
Yeah.
Like there's such a just an I don't know if I call it enigmatic, but there's just such an allure to him.
An animal magnetism.
Oh, unbelievable! Catwoman in this, understandable is all I'll say. But so he's I mean, we have to kind of talk about his casting for this really, because so this movie, for those who don't know, this movie kind of it went through. I'm not going to say it goes so far as say it went through production hell, but it went through a bit of a troubled production because initially Ben Affleck was going to direct it, he was going to star in it, and he wrote the script for it, and it was slated to release in 2018. And then Batman vs Superman came out, and Warner Brothers sort of said, "Hold on a minute, guys. Let's slow the horses a little bit here and let's have a look at what we're doing." And there was a lot of back and forth on it. This was well before Matt Reeves or Robert Pattinson was ever involved. Mm-hmm. But eventually, Warner Brothers, kind of after several years of back and forth on this, they decided they wanted and after Ben Affleck had decided he didn't want to direct the movie because he just wanted to star in it, Warner Brothers decided they wanted an auteur to make the next Batman, which is for a company that is often kind of made fun of for how shitty the DC movies often are. That was it was a very wise choice, I think. Mm-hmm. And they hired Matt Reeves. Ben Affleck had to leave the production because of he checked himself into rehab, I think, for alcohol abuse, and that cleared the way for Robert Pattinson to come in, and we ended up with the pairing that we have here. Yeah,
that's really interesting actually, because if you think about the history of Batman films, the ones that are the most critically acclaimed and also you would imagine the most memorable and successful are ones that have been made by sort of the upper echelon of a director, i.e. either an auteur or a massive director like Chris Nolan, and then you've got Tim Burton's ones. Even the ones from the 90s, the first two Tim Burton ones are the ones that stand the test of time. So it's interesting that they sort of keep trying to dip their toes into a more sort of franchisey, run-of-the-mill Batman, and it never really works,
No, it doesn't. And funnily enough, I actually haven't looked at how well this is doing. I think it's doing quite well. But it's funny,
everyone I know is going to see it, so
yeah. But it's funny that in hiring Robert Pattinson, who is very much not, when you look at him, I mean, he's kind of like Michael Keaton, I guess. That's the comparison you'd make. When you, although Michael Keaton was coming to the role of Batman when it was perhaps a bit sort of camper and hadn't been,
and he was more of
turned
a
into
comedy actor as well at the time.
Yeah, but he still doesn't seem like a superhero.
No,
and Robert Pattinson's coming to it after Ben Affleck, who was built like a brick shithouse when he was doing his Batman, and then before that, obviously Christian Bale.
Yeah,
and Robert Pattinson was coming to it as like this makeup wearing, long haired fop who's listening to Bauhaus and shoegaze and like doesn't speak, and he just doesn't seem like he's the right fit for the role. And then he just absolutely makes it his own. It's like unbelievable the way that he captures something in it. And funnily enough, in going this route with an auteur director and a bit of a sort of out of left field casting for Batman, Warner Brothers may have actually ended up with a very successful trilogy of Batman movies on their hands here, because this is getting such positive word of mouth that the next one is going to be even bigger. Like, that more people are going to go and see that, and as long as that's okay, the third one will probably follow suit. So it's quite funny how they've sort of stumbled into this.
Yeah, it is strange, isn't it? And I feel about it, to be honest with you, like I like a self-contained Batman. Like I don't like Batman if Superman's involved. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Superman, and like a child has a favorite color. My childhood favorite superhero is Superman. I mean, having said that, I don't believe Batman needs to have. Batman works best when he's in a realistic world without Wonder Woman, and of course, like Justice League and stuff can be cool. But I just think Batman works best when he is this caped crusader in the city, this like horribly run city with downtrodden people, and he's like sort of the dark figure that fights for them. I think, and Rob Pattinson encapsulated that so well. And what's interesting, Conrad, is that yes, he was Bruce Wayne, but for 95% of this film, he was Batman. I think that. I think there must have been less than 15 minutes of Bruce Wayne in this.
The only really notable moment of characterization for Bruce Wayne in this movie is when he comes downstairs after a night of crime fighting, and Alfred's like, "I've made you some berries, Master Bruce," and he sits down to eat some berries, and he's wearing this like oversized jumper. He looks like he's the front man of fucking Joy Division, and he sits down to eat berries with his butler while wearing, and he puts on some sunglasses to eat berries indoors. And I was like, okay, that tells me everything I need to know about this version of Bruce Wayne. And you're absolutely right. Apart from that, the whole rest of the movie is just Batman. There's no, time spent with him going to fancy balls or doing Bruce Wayne stuff. And it's funny that you say that Batman works best as a kind of self-contained thing, because I think the history of the movies definitely bears that out. I mean, none of them, apart from the Ben Affleck ones, have really tried to broach that gap and be like, here's Superman and the Justice League are here as well. And they were, the most critically panned ones, I think it's fair to say. But this being self-contained, it's also, even within the confines of like Batman is going to operate on his own in Gotham, it's a very simple story. And you actually said to me, because you saw this, what did you see it 2 weeks ago? You saw it before me.
I saw it. I think I saw it. Yeah, I saw it a little bit before you.
Yeah, but so I kind of knew what it was going to be going into it, but you really sold me on it when you were like, it's essentially just like a detective noir movie.
Yeah,
and it just happens to Batman just happens to be the detective in this movie. Like, so I'll say now, for people who don't know, we're not going to get into spoilers just yet, so don't worry. But so that the sort of the plot of this movie is there is a psychopath known as the Riddler who is murdering corrupt city officials across Gotham, and the police are implicated in the conspiracy. So Commissioner he's not commissioner at this point. He's a sergeant, I think.
They always start off with him at a lower level, don't they?
He's a lieutenant or something. I don't know. He's high enough to make a call to Batman, not so high that he's corrupt.
You could have a Batman trilogy bingo card. Jim Gordon becoming the commissioner in the second film.
Yeah.
That's
Don't put that in your first movie. Don't put that in you need to kill the police commissioner first. That's the rules. But yeah, so Jim Gordon, he gets on the bat phone and he says, "Oi, Batman, we've got some trouble in Gotham." And Batman is essentially investigating these murders and getting embroiled in this web of lies and corruption as it reveals itself.
But Conrad, you've missed a little bit there in the setup. They fantastically built Batman in a way that I haven't seen him built at the very beginning of a film before. He is like the criminals fear him, and like they have a load of really cool shots. Like the bat symbol isn't just to call Batman; it's to strike fear in the hearts of all the criminals. And And then whenever,
sorry, go on, let you finish.
Just to
getting overexcited.
Yeah, no. just to top it off, like they then through this monologue and like having him sort of he was narrating it as well. By doing this, he was like talking about like they're afraid of the dark, and it was showing. I don't even know if he said it actually, but they were showing the criminals once they saw the bat symbol, they were like looking into like dark hallways, dark alleyways, dark doorways, and they were just like basically getting really terrified that he could be anywhere,
Yeah. I'm glad you've said that, because you've reminded me of the introduction to the character, which is at the beginning of the movie. There are three
we're more than 10 minutes in. Sorry, Connor. I just went. Yeah. I've broken the rule.
You've broken the rule. Get out. You're not. We're shutting the podcast down. You're not allowed to do it. Yeah, so the opening of the movie, one of the best openings to a superhero movie I've ever seen. Certainly one of the best introductions to a character, which is a weird thing to say about a character that we all know as well as Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is because you see like these three crimes going on. There's someone doing graffiti. I can't remember what the other one is, but there's some people like about to beat up a guy who's just got off a train, and then there's this voiceover which if you didn't know that this was a noir movie to begin with, the moment it starts with Batman in voiceover narrating what's happening, it's like, okay, I know what we're doing now. And then, you're right. He says that the bat symbol is there to make them fear. And as soon as the bat symbol goes up in the sky, it cuts to all these criminals like looking at dark hallways and just shitting themselves. And it's like, this is really cool. And then, as it turns out, one of the crimes Batman is there to stop. And I think is that the bit where he describes himself as Vengeance, or is that later in the movie?
Who are you, you freak, or whatever? And he goes, I'm Vengeance. And I was like, okay, I love that, like the whole arc of the movie. And we're not going to get the spoilers. Maybe we'll do that very briefly at the end. I'm sure most people are going to see this, but at the very the whole arc of the story is Batman learning his place and what he has to do, and maybe vengeance isn't the best thing to be, but by God, isn't that cool? At the start, whenever he's just like, I'm Vengeance, and then starts beating the hell out of them all.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about, so we might as well talk about it now. Yeah. Is that so? Greg Fraser's cinematography is very dark. The darkest that Batman has ever been, I think. Like, it's quite hard to tell what's going on a lot of the time, and that's by design, I think. But and it brilliantly kind of, I think that the sort of close dark shots on Batman and other characters in this are used to kind of show off the scenes where there's fighting, or the action scenes, because when there is fighting, it's not that often, but it's these brilliant like wide angle shots of Batman just absolutely beating the shit out of people, like, and it's not yet the way he walks, like the sound design of like where he sounds like he weighs like 500 pounds.
He's literally like wearing Doc Martens or something. Yeah.
It's like, oh, this guy is gonna fuck you up, and it's just, it works so well, and then it gets right back to those really close up shots, including, this is a bit of a jump ahead, but there is a muzzle flash chase. That is great as well. Yeah, the
that was in a trailer, I think, but still, it was just amazing. It was amazing. It was like the Darth Vader in Rogue One moment. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, very similar to that. Which is Greg Fraser, so like he's got a great eye for how to introduce like kind of diegetic light sources into his scenes. So the Darth Vader showing up on the Rebel cruiser at the end of Rogue One, very similar to this, where he's just beating up a bunch of guys in a pitch black corridor that's occasionally lit by muzzle flashes, which is great. But no, I was going to talk about the way that the one and only car chase in the movie is shot, where it's almost hard to tell there's a car chase, because it's literally like face cam footage. It's right up in the faces of the people who are driving. Yes, which introduces us to the character of the Penguin. So let's talk about
I got you. So good.
We got to talk about the cast. So okay. I'm gonna say let's leave Colin Farrell till last, because we'll get carried away and we won't talk about everyone else.
Colin Farrell did everything in this that Jared Leto didn't do in House of Gucci. Let's just say that.
Well, yeah. So, okay. Well, and I apologize to anyone listening at home. We're gonna have to fly through a lot of this because I want to make sure we get everything. Yeah. So, Zoe Kravitz as Batwoman. I thought. Did I say Batwoman? Yeah, sorry, Catwoman. Yes, she might turn into Batwoman. We simply don't know. It's unlikely.
I thought she did fantastically well. Absolutely perfect casting. Yeah. I thought she did a really, really good job. I think there's some revelations about her character were like genuinely great for me. I thought that her storyline was great. Now, you know, backed up on my wife's opinion too, and she is a costume worker as well in the film industry. That balaclava didn't work for me. The
balaclava with the little kind of weird cat ears.
Yeah, like I don't mind that.
Semi-cat
I really
ears,
don't
like
mind that actually. I don't know what it was. It's just because it just looked too new. And I think that even like the massive eye hole and everything, I understood what they were going for. But because it was actually just like a balaclava material cut in that way, it made it look not anywhere near the level of polish and detail that the rest of her costume was. For me, it wasn't even the fact. It wasn't even the fact that it was a balaclava or the way that it looked a bit strange. To me, it looked like they bought it from the supermarket, cut the holes in it, and put it on, which makes it realistic. But it just didn't have the detail of the rest of her costume, and that's why I didn't like it.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not a costume designer, but I thought she looked great. I really did think, and I thought Zoe Kravitz's performance. You know, she has the sympathetic storyline that I think she really captured in her performance, and you know, she's very sexy. She and there's the chemistry between her and Batman. I thought she was great.
She sold Jeffrey. She sold going into the belly of the beast really well. I will say as well. Like she had that sort of that feeling of like dread, but also like being brave enough to do it. I thought she did really well at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon.
Jeffy.
Hard act to follow. He's following. I don't know if Commissioner Gordon was in the Ben Affleck ones, but Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon in the Christopher Nolan ones. I think he did a great job. I really do.
I think he did as well, and I thought that he had really good chemistry with Pattinson as well, because they were sort of like they're like a team, and like
they were like opposite sides. They were like kind of mirror images of each other.
And I really liked how even when every single other policeman and commissioner or whatever was against him trusting the Batman, he still trusted the Batman. And I thought that worked really well.
Yep. Okay. Great. And my next one is Colin Farrell. We'll get to him last. Paul Dano as the Riddler.
Paul Dano.
And yeah, that's right. You got Dano. If you want to pronounce it incorrectly, as Anthony does sometimes.
The Dano man.
He's just doing Paul stuff. Really, in this, isn't he?
I'm going to be honest with you, Conrad. Never have I seen an actor. There's a few of them in my time, right? But he's one of the actors where you see him for the first time in a film. Maybe it's Looper, maybe it's 12 Years a Slave, maybe it's something even before that. You see him for Prisoners. You see him and you think, he's going to be a Batman villain one day. You just know.
Well, that guy's obviously the Riddler. Yeah. Like you look at him, it's like that guy's perfect for it. And you know he is perfect. He's very creepy. And the introduction to that character is shot like a horror movie. You know and it's brilliant. This isn't something I noticed actually. I have to admit this is something that was pointed out to me pointed out by another critic that I then picked up on, which is that the introduction to Riddler is through a pair of binoculars with heavy breathing in the background, watching the mayor like kind of say goodbye to his family on Halloween, and then it cuts to inside the house, and it's shot like a horror movie. You know, you've got like the mayor in the foreground watching the television, and then he moves out of the way, and you just see the Riddler kind of in silhouette in the background with his eyes kind of like gleaming. And it's really, really creepy, and it's a brilliant introduction to the character. And it's juxtaposed against a scene later where Batman does the same thing, where he's watching people with binoculars. And it's this brilliant kind of theming of the Riddler and Batman being kind of similar as well, but obviously having different methods and goals.
In fact, actually, we'll can we do spoilers now?
What are we on? 34. Yeah, okay. I'll tell you what, we'll do spoilers now. So if you haven't seen The Batman yet, we're going to start talking spoilers, so be warned. Maybe jump to the ends to catch our final thoughts.
Yeah, so basically the Riddler, the whole way through the film, what you're saying, I noticed that. And I was really loving the parallels between the two. It felt like the Riddler was almost like a copycat of the Batman, except
very much so.
Except he was obviously carrying forward and killing people. So he was like sort of like it's almost like he's the orphan who's downtrodden and poor and therefore sees no other way of getting out of his situation other than killing people. Whereas the Batman comes from a much more sort of upper class orphan background, and I thought that I obviously at the time I was thinking, oh, this is cool. They're like paralleling these two. It obviously then comes about that the Riddler thinks that he's working with the Batman the whole time, and like it's like nuts. It's like of course he's like trying to be like the Batman. Yeah. I thought that was so
he targets
cool.
Bruce Wayne as well, which is like
that
hilarious,
was a brilliant.
Like, I'm working with the Batman, but I'm going to target Bruce Wayne.
Wasn't that one of the best reveals? That was when he was just like Bruce Wayne, and he was just saying it, and you're like, oh my god, he knows, and then he just goes, he's the only one we didn't get, but we got them all, didn't we, buddy? And I'm like, oh my god, I really didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, it's their entire relationship is fantastic. But I think the one thing I wanted to say about Paul Dano, talking about costume design again, is that he was apparently modelled after the images of like the Zodiac killer from and
Ted Cruz's
it's funny
dad.
because you yeah exactly, or perhaps Ted Cruz himself. He seems like an ageless.
I mean,
kind of
Donald Trump is
type.
the most reliable of sources. Let's be honest.
But yeah, so I the only reason I mention that is because this is a detective kind of murder mystery, and there is a lot of David Fincher in the way this is shot, I think. And it's interesting that Paul Dano's Riddler is kind of based off of Zodiac. Okay. Colin Farrell, let's talk about him. Holy moly!
Miss Scoozy.
It's like have you seen The Untouchables?
No.
Okay, so Robert De Niro plays Al Pacino. Doesn't play Al Pacino. He plays Al Capone in The Untouchables, and he looks identical to Colin Farrell in this. But Colin Farrell looks like Robert De Niro playing Al Capone with a little bit of Danny DeVito kind of mixed in there, and it is like. The makeup on the Colin Farrell is done by Mike Marino is the name of the makeup artist who did it. It's unbelievable. It's like some of the best makeup I've ever seen.
It looks like he looks like a real man.
I had to tell my partner that was Colin Farrell. You know
that is mental, and you know the detail in there as well. Like the design of him is like. Really interesting to me because obviously the Tim Burton one they went just full on Penguin, like, you know, he was like wow. That was like a full on Danny DeVito, whereas this is really subtle, and he has like a scar on his face that's only on one side, and it goes from his nose up diagonally up his cheek, and all the time they're lighting him with half of his half his face in darkness, half his face in light, and therefore. When you see the half of his face that's in light with the scar there, it looks like that's a penguin's beak. I thought that was such amazing, subtle costume or makeup design. It works so well for me. I thought it was great.
And he's such a... The tone of this movie is... There is some humor in it, but it's very serious and very dark. Yeah. And like to get someone to kind of realize a character like the Penguin in a way that isn't ridiculous, particularly with Colin Farrell's performance, which is like you've already quoted it, is very quotable and very very kind of ridiculous. Yeah. But it fits so well in this because there's this like sense of threat underneath him because he's like Carmine Falcone's kind of right hand man.
He's sort of like he's like I don't know. He's not the muscle, but he's kind of like their lackey, but he's also higher up. So like he's like the boss when they're not around
in the mafia or something. Yeah, but he's a great character. He really is, and. It's such a treat whenever he's on screen because he's ridiculous but in all the right ways. I think.
And they're all laughing at him and stuff like as if laughing like who, and they call him Oz, you know, Oswald and Ozzy or whatever. You Ozzy, you're gonna do it or whatever, and they're all laughing at him. And then at the end of the film, he's sort of standing there like looking over like a flooded Gotham, thinking, "Yeah, I am gonna take over this." And I think that they have said there's gonna be like a spin-off HBO show, like the John Cena one, but it's gonna be for the Penguin.
Which I could see myself getting into, to be honest. That seems like it'd be really good fun. Okay, so before we talk about the kind of finale of this movie, I just very quickly wanted to sort of touch on the kind of bat stuff in this movie because that's worth mentioning. It's a very a very low tech Batman film, really. Like he uses a grappling hook occasionally. He has got a Batmobile, but the Batmobile, the reveal of it is so cool because it's literally just like a muscle car with a fucking jet engine on the back of it. And the first thing it does is stall, which is very believable for a car.
He's not really ever used it before,
No, well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that as well, because there's a moment in this where he has to escape a police station, and he runs right to the top of the police station, gets to the top of the roof, and he gets to the edge of the roof, looks down, is like, oh fuck, and it's just a reaction you don't normally see from Batman, and then he kind of suits up into this wingsuit thing and flies down. But he kind of fucks it up and injures himself quite badly.
Also, it's an actual suit that people like jump off cliffs with in real life. So it's a real that was cool.
Suit. But there's a lot of Batman's been doing this for a little while at this point in the movie.
But you still get
but you still get the sense that he's kind of like learning the ropes and is not like, so I mean the wingsuiting, he wouldn't have that reaction if he'd done it loads of times before. So it's probably like he doesn't enjoy the prospect of jumping off of buildings. And the one thing I really wanted to get your take on was what is his name? David Crossman is the costume designer who designed the Batsuit, which is obviously a crucial part of any Batman movie. And I know a lot of people in the circles I run in kind of made fun of it a little bit when they saw images of this revealed, but I love the fact that it's like a trench coat basically, or it has a little collar like a trench coat, like to really kind of really like kind of exemplify those tropes of noir. Like he's a detective who's hard boiled and on the case.
I really like the design. In fact, like talking about those little gadgets and stuff, I find people before this film came out, people would have called the Christopher Nolan one in some way grounded in reality. In some way, like you could see that he was trying to do a more realistic Batman. Now, let me tell you the difference between the two, right? And this is why I like them both. I like both versions and I like both styles. But this is a bit more realistic, and the reason for that is in Christopher Nolan's one, they're like, I want to have a bat cape which completely goes rigid and he's able to fly with. They're like, okay, how could we do that would be in some way plausible? I don't know, maybe like electric shock through the cape, which makes it stiff. It's like, is that actually practical for someone to actually go out and fight crime using that? It doesn't matter. If it's a tiny bit plausible, then I can put it in the movie. Whereas this one is, what would someone in real life have? You know what I mean? And this is
what would you bring with you?
This what would, if Batman existed in real life, what would he have? And that's the difference. Is that Christopher Nolan, although I like both styles, as long as it's plausible that in real life someone could have this, then that's okay. He can go ahead with however crazy. It's like they can go with whatever crazy idea he has, he can go ahead with it because it's plausible enough. Whereas in this, it's like, hang on, but would someone do that? You know what I mean? And that's the difference.
Like there's never a scene in the Christopher Nolan movies where he takes the tumbler down a particularly kind of a road with a low bridge and it's like, I've got to back up, I can't get under this. Like they don't worry about if it's even remotely plausible.
He just flies on rooftops. He's flying on rooftops.
I don't know. Yeah. Whereas, this is very much like his car is a fucking car.
Yeah.
It just has a jet engine on the back for when it needs to go really fast, which is, I'm very much a fan of that. Kind of Route 1 engineering.
Cool. I also love the shot in the car chase where there's a huge pile of like burning cars behind the Penguin. The Penguin's upside down, and he's like, I got him. And then the Batman just like drives his car over the top, parks it, gets out and starts walking towards him, but it's all from the Penguin's perspective, and he's upside down with the flames behind him. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a great shot. I really cannot stress enough how well shot this movie is. It's beautiful to look at. Okay, so finale of this movie.
Yeah.
Batman has gone through all the Riddlers. He's left riddles behind in all the crime scenes that he's visited, which you said were great because when you hear them solved, you said to me privately, when you hear them solved, it's like, oh, that totally makes sense. And you're absolutely right. The riddles are quite clever. I enjoyed all of them.
Yeah.
But we finally get to the point where the Riddler has been caught and a big kind of conspiracy involving Bruce's parents and all the high-ranking members of the Gotham elite and I can't remember what it's actually called.
There's got to be a failed community fund
it's
in
like
a Batman film.
Revitalized Gotham or something like that.
Yeah.
And the problem with doing it in Gotham is everyone's skimming off the top, and you have to know that they're skimming off the top. So there's not going to be anything left for the people of Gotham.
Well, in the Chris Nolan ones, it was the monorail. In this one, it was like a community fund project. Every single one. That's the essence of Batman. Like, you have to have the downtrodden who have been screwed over by the rich elites promising them the future and then it failing. It has to happen that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Gotham can't work well. It can't be a functional city. That's the main reason. But so eventually the Riddler is captured, is taken into custody, but it's all revealed to be part of his expected plan, and his explosives that he's planted blow up the seawall to Gotham, flood the city, and everyone rushes into what is essentially Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
It's
literally called Gotham Square Garden, I think.
Yeah, and I don't actually know where it was shot, because principal photography for this, I think, was mainly in London and Edinburgh, so I don't know where they shot that, but it looked a lot like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
But so they flood it, and then there's like gunmen in there, and there's this wonderfully cathartic scene, and to talk about this, we're going to have to talk about the kind of people who aren't going to enjoy this movie, which is to say a lot of people, I think. It's based on the viewing I went to. So there are long periods of this movie where, quote unquote, nothing happens. It's just Batman
solving
some crimes, looking at dusty sheets of paper, going through microfilm, all that kind of stuff. It's all great stuff. I love it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what your showing of this was like. My showing, and I said this to Anthony before we started recording, so I was like, I've got to get this in, because it was the worst movie. I loved this movie, and it's in spite of it being one of my worst cinema experiences of all time. So I had a group of 4 teenage boys, and their mum, I presume, sat behind me. I had to tell one of them off at one point because he kept on putting his feet up on the chair next to me, and I was like, I'm not having this. So I had to be that person. And then there was a man, a grown man, easily in his 40s with his son. And he got up. Like, I'm not going to judge someone for needing to go to the toilet, but at the same time, he got up and went to the toilet 5 times in this movie. It's a 3-hour movie. It's not that long. Come on. And then he would get his fucking phone out, and I was sat like a couple of rows behind him, so I could see what was on his phone. He was looking on his phone at stuff about the Batman. I could see the images.
No way.
So I was like, just watch the movie. If you're waiting for questions to be answered, the film is there. They're going to tell you. I promise you. But so that was the experience I had, and still, despite all of that, despite having to tell off some kid who was being annoying, I'm thinking about making the frankly unconscionable decision to tell off not 1 but 2 people in one film for basic breaches of film watching rules.
The etiquette.
I got the etiquette. Yes, exactly. Thank you. I got to that final scene, and it's just such you get this. I mean, a wave, I guess, is the word for it. No pun intended. This wave of catharsis as Batman has been defined by vengeance and is a very angry man, and he just puts his body on the line to protect people.
I love it, yeah.
And it's such a good conclusion to this movie. And I was like, fuck, is they going to kill Batman in the first movie of this trilogy? Like, obviously they're not going to kill him in the first movie of this trilogy, but they get you. They really do.
Well, yeah, because I like up until now, that's why I loved it as well. And I think there is a criticism. But I like this, but there is a criticism that this end of this film is a little bit Return of the King, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, where there's like 3 different endings. But there's a little bit of that criticism there. But I accept that as a comparison. But I actually like that about it. I like that we sort of get the end of him solving the case, and then we get him having to confront the gunman. As well as that, I like the idea that we get him becoming the Batman who is for the people and to help the people, rather than being the Batman who's just trying to focus on the crime. And that's it's really interesting because it's analogous to the real world, Konrad. Actually, when does the world get better? Well, it's when you actually try to help people, not when you try and punish people. And I think that's what he's sort of learning, is that he's there to save the people, and therefore that's what he's going to become. He's going to become their hero. And I like that transition of him into a hero. I thought it worked really, really well.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think, and there's that wonderful top-down shot, which I've gone on about the photography, but the top-down shot of him walking with a flare, with a crowd of civilians behind him, and he's leading them out, and it's just it is such a good ending to this movie. And I think this is the things I will say is that are not. I don't think these are criticisms, but I can understand why people don't enjoy this movie for them, for these reasons. It is a long movie. Mm-hmm. It asks you to pay attention the whole way through. Mm-hmm. I think it could stand to probably be about half an hour shorter, though I don't really know what you'd cut, but I definitely think you could probably shave a bit off. And if you're coming here for your typical like kind of Marvel action fest where the final half hour is just people punching like nameless robots or whatever, that you're not going to get that with this, which is not to say that's bad. I like those kind of movies as well, but this is not that kind of movie. And I think definitely in the showing I was in, I could tell that there were people who would like come here being like, oh cool, we're going to see Batman, I'm going to see Ben Affleck shoot a bunch of people with a gun despite that being the one thing Batman's not supposed to do, because I don't know, Zack Snyder decided to do that. And you could definitely tell there were some people who were a bit like, what the fuck is it? I don't know what's going on. This is asking me to pay way more attention than I was prepared to.
Yeah, like everyone's hopped up on Marvel now, and then they get Batman back, and it's like like the last time they saw it was like The Dark Knight Rises, and now they're like, oh my god, yeah, this is going to be like amazing, because it's like finally like they've come to love superhero films through Iron Man and stuff, and now it's like, oh my god, it's the thing I love, but now it's the character that I grew up watching. And I just think that maybe there's a disconnect there. Having said that, it's doing really well, and there's a lot of people who I know who you would call casual viewers, the casual audience, who absolutely love this movie. And I think that it's interesting, because I think some of the criticisms are coming from people who are sort of trying to hipster it, and there's also criticisms coming from people who didn't, the criticisms coming from the hipsters are, and there's nothing wrong with being a hipster sometimes. Some of the criticisms are valid. For example, I think the introduction, someone said to me, the introduction of like all of the gunmen, all of a sudden it was like bang, like let's have this big Hollywood ending, when it was a very slow roll the rest of the film. Like I can see that. I liked it personally. And then the other sort of the casual audience, you would think that and a lot of them would say, it's too long, it was boring, nothing happened. The thing is, though, what I'm finding, people in our generation who grew up, or at least in their teenage years anyway, watching those Chris Nolan films, I'm finding that they just love Batman. Like they love Batman, and they want to go see Batman, and they enjoy it. And from our generation, I've not heard many people who didn't like the film. And what's interesting as well is I was talking to someone, I think one of my colleagues from work, and they were going to see it, and they hadn't seen it, and they said that their brother had seen it, and their brother loved it, so they said, so I'm probably going to like it too, because we usually like all the same stuff. And then what he said is, like, my brother said that you could sort of view this one as being between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to stand here and explain to them that it's a different universe, and I'm not going to do that. But for them, it's like they're invested in the character enough to be like, okay, what stage of Batman is this? Is this Batman after he's just become Batman? Am I going to have to watch the origin story? And like, so they even at that cursory understanding of the storylines and the universe, they're still like getting excited to the point of they're thinking of where this Batman would fit. And I think that speaks to the importance of those Chris Nolan films to our generation.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And I think as long as people are engaging with the character in this movie, on whatever terms they can meet it on, that's good enough for me, quite frankly. I think this is at its core a really, really great detective noir movie that just happens to feature Batman occasionally beating the absolute shit out of people.
It's brutal.
and that's perfect for me. I think it's and there's so much good here. If you're coming for good performances, you've got that. If you're coming for beautiful photography, you've got that. A good score, you've got that. Like, there's just my only criticism of this, I think you've kind of nailed it a little bit there, that the ending kind of does come out of nowhere to some extent, but I think that's sort of the point, because one of the tropes
we bought into the Riddler too.
Well, yes, exactly. But I also think like one of the tropes of noir is that the protagonist doesn't know what's going on until it's all revealed at the end. That sense of kind of helplessness and getting lost in this labyrinth of corruption is one of the big tropes of the genre. So I was fine with that. And as you say, I bought into the Riddler, who's very Joker-like. Or Heath Ledger's Joker-like in this sense that he's got everything kind of planned out, which I was very into.
I will say one thing, Conrad. Though there is a negative for me. There is a negative.
Go on. What is it?
I wish they didn't have the Joker tease in the main body of the film.
What, the Barry Keoghan?
Barry Keoghan. Yeah, I like that he's the Joker, and I like where they're going with that. But I don't like that was in the movie. It felt a little bit post-creditsy for me while the film was still going on.
Was that not a post-credit scene? I'm trying to remember where that scene was.
No, it was actually before a couple of key scenes. Like there was actually content of the film after that. You know.
Okay, I don't remember that at all. I for some reason I think I've come at that at exactly the same angle you have, right? Where I've just kind of, in my mind, chronologically reshuffled them around to be like, well, that was obviously a post-credit scene.
Yeah. Like, so I didn't like that. I liked the scene, but apparently it would have worked better. Apparently they cut a scene. So one of the would have been longer, but one of the scenes that hit the cutting room floor. So I don't know if you knew about this, Conrad, but apparently that isn't the Joker, but it is who will become the Joker. So basically, in the time that this Batman has been Batman, he has taken down one other criminal, like serial criminal or serial murderer. I don't know what he did, and that was this guy who's going to become the Joker. And basically, he was the first one he took down. And basically, the Batman went to Arkham to talk to him to find out clues from him as to how he could maybe catch the Riddler, because he had caught him before. Now, they eventually cut that scene. And I think that they left the second one in because they're like, well, we've got Barry Keoghan. He's now the Joker. He's going to be the Joker. You know, we can't cut him out completely. Put the tease in
for the next one.
They're like, we can't cut him out completely, so we'll keep the tease in. But I think it would have worked really well because if we had known he was already there and that previous scene existed. Having said that, because this is so, it was originally meant to be a bit of like an origin backstory for the Joker as well, because we've not really had that before with the Joker, except obviously the film Joker. But you know what I mean. I personally don't like that it was left in. I think they should have cut both if they were going to cut one of them. Having said that, I am intrigued by this idea of Batman and the Joker being linked to before he was the Joker, because he said, like, you know, you do this and you do that, and then everyone starts calling you a clown, you know. So you can see he's sort of going down that way. So he isn't the Joker yet, but he's gonna be. But obviously you wouldn't know that unless you listen to Matt Reeves talk about it. Because
no, I mean, and you got the laugh basically. Yeah, so it's like, okay, that's the Joker right there.
But I just don't like that it was in the main body of the film, and I think it would have worked better if they kept the other one in. And I think they should have cut that out.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that one. The thing I'm most fascinated about is seeing how Barry Keoghan does a Joaquin Phoenix impersonation. I wonder, do you think they're going to try and tie those continuities together at all, or are they just going to be like, nope, they're just different? I don't know.
I don't think they will, and to be honest with you, I'm a little bit disappointed by that. As much as I rail on Joker a bit, even though I did enjoy watching it, and obviously it wears its influences on its sleeve massively. I still did enjoy the film, and I wouldn't have minded if Joaquin Phoenix was the Joker of this universe. Having said that, I don't know how that would work, because I think there's like 20 years difference in the chronologies. Also, I would have maybe. I thought to myself, like, I knew Barry Keoghan was cast, and I was like, okay, maybe they're doing a thing where, like, Joaquin Phoenix wasn't the actual Joker, but he was, like, the person who's created this cult that now Barry Keoghan will become the leader of. I was thinking of how this could work. I personally just don't think they're going to be connected.
No. But, I mean, there's still a lot of talk about Joker 2 happening.
Yeah, it is going to happen.
That movie made a huge amount of money, so they'd be crazy to leave that on the table. But then, unfortunately, they're also making Batman movies.
Batman's like 10 years old in that one or something. You know what I mean? Because he went to see Bruce Wayne,
doesn't he?
Yeah.
Maybe there's more than one Joker. Maybe this one's a sequel to.
We'll see in 5 years when they do the multiverse of Batness or something.
Yes, perfect. That'll like Joaquin Phoenix will get sucked out into the Michael Keaton chronology, and we'll get Barry Keoghan.
Well, Michael Keaton's going to be in The Flash. So there's like literally like 3 Batman on the go.
I can't keep track. I can't keep track of all this multiverse nonsense. It's all. Just as an aside before we wrap up, multiverse stuff is where I always check out of comics, because it's sort of like, well, you've just removed the stakes from everything really here, haven't you? Because like you said, no matter what happens, we can always just get another Batman or get another Spider-Man or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're rapidly approaching the event horizon of multiverse bullshit in both Marvel and DC at the same time, I think.
Yeah, I think, and funny you mention that, because I think there is definitely, like, you know, I work with a lot of young people, and I think that the young people who like the Batman are of a particular mindset, and they're of a particular type.
They're the cool kids.
The cool kids. Well, in my opinion, they're the cool kids. The ones who don't seem to like it are just the ones who the only superhero films they really watch are Marvel films, and therefore they can't help but compare it to like Spider-Man and stuff. Spider-Man No Way Home was like the culmination of a nostalgia bomb that was ticking for 20 years, and I think that they're immediately comparing that to Spider-Man, and they're like, well, that didn't make me feel the same way that Spider-Man did, so therefore I don't like that. And
I don't feel happy at the end of this movie.
A lot of people, I personally am a big hater of whenever you say to someone, well, what did you think of this film? And they say, well, it wasn't as good as the other one, or wasn't it, like, what did you think of film A? Well, it wasn't as good as film B, which came out 3 months ago. It's like, let's talk about film A for a bit. You know, I don't like always comparing films right out the gate. Let's just talk about a film, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, especially when they're as like different as Spider-Man No Way Home and Batman. Like, they're effectively different genres of well, yeah, but I mean, Batman, it doesn't, like, the Batman, excuse me, it's barely a superhero movie, to be honest. It's like,
I know.
The fact he could easily just be a guy, really.
I do love that, Konrad, though. There was the whole conversation of like, are superhero films like diluting the movie space? And it's like, how do we fix this? Let's make a real classy noir
prestige superhero
but it's
movie.
Still a superhero film. yeah.
He's still got a costume, and we can still sell toys of this. That's the important thing. Do kids still buy toys of superheroes? They must do, surely.
Well, my son has a few.
Well, there you go. Get him a The Batman.
He didn't buy him with his own money, though.
Fucking freeloader. Okay, right. I think that's going to do it for us. We've talked about this for over an hour.
This is our longest episode for a long time.
But this was a great movie. So, I mean, what would you, a gun to your head, bat gun to your head, how would you rate Matt Reeves' The Batman?
I'm just going to do it. I don't care what anyone says about me. It's a 5 for me, 5 star.
I almost gave it a 5, but I gave it a 4 and a heart on Letterboxd. I don't
4 and a heart.
I think it just needed to be a little bit shorter to get that 5, but it was really close to it. It would be 4.
I love a long film.
I mean, I do. I like the Lord of the Rings extended editions. I don't know what it was about this one. I think, you know what it was. I think if I watched it in the comfort of my own home without Toilet Man and Phone Man and kicking chairs, it would. I think it would have got that extra star from me. I think so. I'll put an asterisk by that 4 star and say compromised viewing experience for this, but it is great. Really, like, if you haven't seen it, please go and check it out, because it's such a great movie. I think that's going to do it for us then this week on the Best Movie Podcast Ever, which leaves us with one simple question to answer, as we always do, and that is, Anthony, what's your favourite movie this week?
Well, I saw The Batman last week, so this week it's 1968's The Planet of the Apes.
Lovely. Lovely. Charlton Heston, he'd have been a good Batman, I think. Like, he could have pulled it off.
He could have, yeah.
I'm going to just say The Batman, because
it's good.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I haven't got it in me to come up with something on the spot that's funnier or cleverer than that.
You're the Batman, I'm the Ape Man. All good.
Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to. The problem with Planet of the Apes, I'll just say this very quickly, is that The Simpsons, as it did with so many things, just completely ruined it.
Dr. Zayas.
Yeah. I Love Every Ape I See, from Chimpanzee to Chimpanzee, is one of the all-time great song lyrics, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot and Troy McClure for the use of our theme song. Check out links to their stuff down in the link in the description. And thank you to you for joining us. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. We are the Culture Cave on YouTube, and we're the best movie podcast ever on podcasting apps. Get involved in the comments. Let us know what you thought of The Batman. I'm sure all of you will love it, because how could you possibly not? Give the show a like. It really does help. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.
Damn it!